Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Your Money, Your Life podcast, episode 166, where we touch on the biggest news of the day and the trends, as well as personal finance updates. I'm your host, Alano Saporu. Before we get into the episode, make sure wherever you're listening and subscribes, wherever and everywhere you're listening or watching, make sure you 5-star rate, review, and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and on YouTube so we can get into this every single week like we do. First and foremost, we always talk about the market and what's been going on. And it's actually been rather quiet. So nothing crazy going on in the market this week, but we can touch on the few things that are important and that have shown themselves in the market. The big thing was the data on jobs that came in last week. The weekly jobless claims came in a lot higher than expected. So this is what we've been talking about recently: slowing job growth, to slow down consumers, and to ultimately slow down inflation. So the job growth came in much lower than expected. Private payrolls were below expectations in March. So last month they were below expectations, and the number of available positions, meaning job postings and availability for people to get jobs, fell below 10 million for the first time in almost 2 years. So people are firing or laying off, and they're not going to hire as much. And we've been predicting this for months. It's gone from tech to Wall Street to Main Street, and it will continue for the next several months. So that's something to note, because one, as we know, the Federal Reserve is trying to continue to hike rates to slow down growth and to slow down inflation and consumer spending, which will ultimately slow down inflation. So it's really just to see how the market reacts. What's the market think about this? And the market so far yesterday was down a bit, but if you look at it year to date, for the week, we're up almost 2% for the week. And it's mainly because a lot of investors are betting that the Fed is going to have to pause after maybe one more rate hike. So that's kind of the big market update. Again, everything is taken into consideration, but not one thing makes the biggest difference in the world. Let's jump right into our current news updates. There was some news updates this week that I thought was interesting and ones that we could discuss and talk about. The first one being the US box office rebound. So pandemic, the movie ticket sales are starting to come back. Box office pulled in 1.8 billion last quarter, while it's still down 25% from pre-pandemic levels. So that'd be 2019. It's trending back upwards, which I think is interesting. I actually went to see Creed 3 in theaters. It's funny because I booked it, and I went to see it Sunday, but it was actually streaming the same day, but I already had a ticket to go see it. So that's the big thing that people thought would hamper more box office movie ticket sales, that you also have the option to stream it a lot earlier than you would before. So there's two movies that have drawn big blockbuster consideration, being Creed 3 and Cocaine Bear. Seen both of them. Creed 3 was actually pretty good, pretty funny. Cocaine Bear was all right. I fell asleep a little bit, but Creed 3 was really good. A pretty good movie, great directional debut for Michael B. Jordan. So they're just saying that the numbers are starting to come back for struggling chains, and we'll see if that plays out. Usually in the spring, summer, people do more things. So you'll probably see a resurgence, a little bit of those numbers, as long as people are still working and have jobs and able to use discretionary income for those sort of things. So I actually saw another story that's quite interesting. So Johnson & Johnson is proposed to pay nearly $9 billion to settle lawsuits that allege its talcum baby powder caused cancer. So they're going to pay $9 billion to settle lawsuits that allege their talcum baby powder caused cancer. This is going to be one of the largest product liability settlements in U.S. history. I saw this headline, which I thought was scary, crazy. So their baby powder could have been causing cancer. That is a scary, incredibly scary thought. And, rightfully so that they have a penalty judgment coming down on their heads, because that is incredibly freaky. Just think about, you're putting something that could cause cancer on your own newborn baby. Wow, that is crazy. So there's a couple more stories I thought were interesting that I wanted to get to. One being the big merger. So Endeavor owns UFC, and Endeavor is a big holding company and also a talent management company that grew really large. And they own UFC, and they just have another acquisition. They're buying the WWE for roughly 9 billion, if I'm not mistaken. So the WWE is going to merge with Endeavor, the business behind the UFC. And they think this publicly traded company, this new entity, will be worth a combined 21 billion, and the new ticker will be TKO, aka Technical Knockout. And so last year, WWE and the UFC pulled the same weight. They had 1.3 billion in revenue, both of them, and now this merged entity is going to be worth roughly 21 billion dollars. And so this merger is pretty cool, interesting. I think it's really interesting. WWE has performed really, really well over the last few years. They've actually been one of the companies that really surged during the pandemic. As even being a live entertainment company, their stock did really well, and UFC business has been exploding over the last decade. And so really merging these, and then also being have a the solid management. Endeavor has solid management. This is actually a strong, strong, and interesting company, to be honest, because they're one of the leaders, if not the leader, in live entertainment, and now obviously combat sports. So it's really interesting, as you fight for eyeballs, looking at how they're doing it. I thought that was quite interesting. So this is a sad, sad story, folks. And it was all over social media, so I had to touch on it. But a tech exec, Bob Lee, was the founder of Cash App, and he was the former chief technology officer at Square. He has died after being fatally stabbed in San Francisco. The attack happened in near San Francisco downtown in the early hours of Tuesday morning. No arrests have been made yet, but Lee was a father of two and has served as chief product officer of a crypto startup called Mobile Coin since 2021. So this was shocking and sad news. It was all over again, all over social media. And it's sad, sad to hear about his passing. And you know, prayers to him and his family. Very, very sad news. UBS, folks, UBS said they may cut its workforce by 20 to 30%. So that'd be about as many as 36 employees, 36,000, 36 employees, 36,000 employees following its emergency takeover of Credit Suisse. So we talked about this, UBS being forced to buy Credit Suisse, a forced marriage. And they said, hey, we're going to do it, sure. But we're going to cut 36,000 jobs if we do that. So that is a lot of jobs. And it's because the company's, Credit Suisse is struggling. Credit Suisse has been struggling, and now they're being this forced merger, take on a lot of bad business divisions. And you really have to cut a lot of overhead to do so. So that is an interesting, interesting prospect. More on note, folks, of course, it's tax time. So I saw an interesting article about tax refunds and how they're a big, big letdown this year. So about half of Americans anticipated they would receive refunds that were the same size, even bigger than last year's. That was done by a recent survey by TaxAct. But people are just really actually just 30%, only 30% of people expected smaller refunds. But that's what's happening. Refunds are predicted to go down 11% from last year on average. And the reason being is because a lot of people have been warning about this, because a lot of the federal credits and reliefs that we had during the pandemic, they're now ended. And so now people are going back to a more normalized tax refund and tax situation. You're losing things like the child tax credit and earned income tax credit expansions. So a lot of people are receiving smaller refunds this year, and they're sometimes owing money back to the government. And so what I propose for people to do is, if you've already filed, you're getting your refund, plan on it being less, or if you haven't filed, plan on your refund being much less this year. And plan accordingly for the debt pay down that you're going to do, and for the savings that you're going to do, or to cover bills. Make sure you plan accordingly and be conservative with your plan on it, or your budgeting on it, because it may or may not be what you think, as far as, how large the refund will be. So that's something to keep on top of mind, because you're seeing it across the board, whether people are owing or they're having less due. So that's something to certainly keep in mind as well. We talked about this rule before, but I think it's important to bring up the 50-30-20 rule. People have been asking, how much should I save? What should I save? Remember, the 50-30-20 approach is super and simplified way to budget and save. 50% goes to your needs, mortgage, car payment, all the things you need to pay. 30%, I like that you can flip this around. 30% can go to retirement. and 20% goes to fun. But just remember that 50-30-20 rule. Again, it works on any dollar amount. It's a percentage based thing. So if you have $100, you do 50% there. So that's $50, right? So you take it on any dollar amount. It's percentage based. It works on any dollar amount. It's the way you should look at it when you're first starting out budgeting and saving, folks. Super simplified. And that's what we do here, is give you the best advice. So make sure you share, like, subscribe, and tap in and let people know, especially your family and friends, because we do this every week. We'll talk next week.